Good morning, my dear students. Today I shall be dealing with Leda and the Swan, a very famous poem written by W.B. Yeats. Now, William Butler Yeats was born in the year 1865 and died in 1939. He was an Irish poet, dramatist, and writer, and considered to be one of the foremost figures of the 20th century literature. He was a driving force behind the Irish literary revival, and along with Lady Gregory, founded the Abbey Theatre, serving as its chief during its early years. He was awarded the 1923 Nobel Prize in Literature and later served two terms as the Senator of the Irish Free State. Now, the poem under our discussion is Leda and the Swan. It is a sonnet composed in 1923 and printed in the Dial in June 1924. It was published in the collection The Cat and the Moon and Certain Poems. The poem is based on the Greek mythological story of beautiful Leda, who gave birth to Helen and Clytemnestra after she was raped by Zeus in the form of a swan. Now let us read out the poem first. Leda and the Swan. A sudden blow, the great wings beating steel, above the staggering girl, her thighs caressed by the dark waves, her nape caught in his bill. He holds her helpless breast upon his breast. How can those terrified, vague fingers push the feathered glory from her loosening thighs? And how can body laid in that white rust but feel the strange heart beating where it lies? A shudder in the loins engenders there the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead, being so caught up, so mastered by the brute blood of the air. Did she put on his knowledge with his power before the indifferent beak could let her drop? Now, if we analyze this poem stanza by stanza, then we'll find that in the first stanza, the poet narrates dramatically and with almost a Dante like concentration the story of meeting a common girl and a god, while the former was bathing naked in a stream. Zeus, in the form of a big bird, and Swan is represented as giving a sudden and staggering blow to the girl. Leda, bathing naked in a pool. The bird fluttering over her, caressing her thighs, holding her nape with her beak, and pressing her helpless breasts upon his chest, must have been a nerve shattering experience for the terrified girl. The strangers, too, shows the helplessness of the delicate and beautiful maiden Leda being subjected to sexual exploitation by the swan, by the Greek god Zeus. The poet says that the naked bathing girl was unable to save herself from the mating by Jupiter in the form of swan. Her fingers of the hands were delicate and weak, and she was terrified enough, so she found herself unable to push off the big white bird with lots of feathers. She started being passionate, and so her thighs started becoming loose to let the copulation being performed without resistance. The delicate and frail body of Leda also began to beat inside with the vehemence of sexual desire. She started taking interest in the act, it seems, with her cooperation. The third stanza brings the physical union between Leda and the swan to its ultimate satisfying conclusion. Leda's rape then culminates in impregnation. A shudder in the loins engendered there. Thus, a god mated with a mortal, and the event proved a fateful one, as it set in motion a whole chain of events. In the due course, the girl gave birth to Helen, who in turn became the cause of the Trojan War, the burning of the roof and tower of Troy, and also of the destruction of the big wall around Troy. Leda later gave birth to another god named Clytemnestra, who caused the tragedy of Agamemnon. Agamemnon was the leader of the forces which defeated and destroyed Troy. Later on his return from the war to his country Mycenae in Argos, Agamemnon himself was killed by his own wife, Clytemnestra, who was also the daughter of Leda and Zeus. By alluding to the Trojan War and Clytemnestra's murder of Agamemnon, it suggests that this initial act of violence engendered the later cataclysms. The last two lines of the sonnet conclude the poem with a rhetorical question. The poet wants to know if Leda imbibed the knowledge with the physical power of the god Zeus after the act, when he no longer feels interested and released the neck of the girl. The broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead. Like the second coming, Leda and the Swan describes a moment that represented a change of era in Yeats' historical model of jazz, which he offers in an elaborate form in his masterpiece, A Vision. There he sets out his mystical theory of the universe. But whereas the second coming represents in Yeats' conception the end of modern history, Leda and the Swan represents something like its beginning. As Yeats understands it, it brought about the end of the ancient mythological era and the birth of modern history. As an aesthetic experience, the sonnet is remarkable. It combines words indicating powerful action, for example, words like sudden blow, beating, staggering, beating, shudder, mustard, burning, and so on, with adjectives and descriptive words that indicate Leda's weakness and helplessness. Caressed, helpless, terrified, vague, loosening, thus increasing the sensory impact of the poem. The poem remains one of the great masterpieces ever crafted by W.B. Yeats, encompassing an act of violence and transforming it through his poetic art into a memorable aesthetic creation.